Good evening. Tonight I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to share some personal stories I have of my father in law's property. Now, he's got a little place in the Sierras. It's just outside of Sequoia National Park, and that property itself, about 15 acres, it's about 2,500, 3,000 feet. It's kind of at the scrub oaks and grass and everything, as you kind of see. And it gets a little dusting of snow, but you just go up the road that it's on, and in about 15, 20 minutes later, you kind of turn a corner and boom, everything's green, it's pine trees. And you keep going about a half hour past the property, and you're up in, there's big giant sequoias everywhere, and there's ferns, and even in the dry part of the year, there's a lot of moisture, and it's a very cool place, very cool. Uh, like I said, it's the house itself is about half a mile from the Sequoia National Forest and just a stone throw away from Sequoia National Park. It's just outside of a little town called Springville, which is in the middle of nowhere, and then you drive a long ways farther, and then that's where this place is, even farther in the middle of nowhere. So there's been quite a number of things that have happened over the years, and I think it would be kind of neat to share these stories with you folks. I had kind of an orb encounter where you saw a light in the woods. We've had some trail camera stuff where they've been moved and strange things have happened. And we also had a couple of what I feel were Bigfoot encounters up there, because there's a long history of those in the Sierras, and especially in Tulare County where this is and in this area. So we're going to jump into it. I just wanted to share a few things. We are going to be going back up to this property in October and in November with some buddies of mine. I get up there a couple times a year. So let's take a look at a few stories here. Okay, so the first story is, I'll try to keep it brief, is from when we were coyote hunting. It was a buddy of mine. We were up there for the weekend. It was just him and I. And we went out, I think it was a Friday or Saturday night. It was getting dusk, kind of, coyote time, and we set up in this field off of this fire road that's about 20 minutes past the property. So this fire road that's gated off, it's a Forest Service road or BLM land. I know they graze cows there because you see the pies and the little corrals and stuff. And we're all camoed out and got cover sent on us, and we're set up under this big oak tree and on top of this hill in this clearing. And down in the clearing, we have one of those really terrible coyote calls, that does like wounded rabbit, hurt cow, injured fawn, and it's these horrible rackets. And it was really echoing through this canyon because we were on top of this hill, and it was just echoing and going off really, really loud. I mean, everything in a 2 or 3 mile radius had to know it was calling us. And I remember sitting there under the tree with kind of a bush in front of me and a rock to my right, like a boulder I'm sitting next to, and hunkered down. My face is covered, all camoed out. And we're about 75 yards from the call, kind of in this big clearing. And I've got an AR-15. I think my buddy had a lever action 357 or something. And we're sitting there, and I remember thinking, predator call. Wow, I wonder if we're going to call in a mountain lion or a bear by accident. So I'm really not a big predator hunter. I have no interest really in shooting coyotes, but I just wanted to go out in the woods and experience stuff. And my buddy was into it, so I was going to go with him and just be a backup or something, so to speak. So we're sitting there under the tree, and I hear a slight crunching under this big giant oak tree that's behind us. And there's a lot of leaf litter on the ground. And I kind of hear something moving, but it's dusk, so I figure it's a squirrel or a raccoon. And about 15 or 20 minutes into it, there's, or actually longer than that, but 45 minutes into it, it's getting really dark, dusky. It's hard to see the sights on my rifle. And a rock whizzes over my shoulder. Now it's somewhere between the size of like a football and a basketball, but obviously not perfectly round, like rock size. And it whizzes right over my shoulder. Whoosh, I hear it. Whoosh. And boom, you can hear a thud when it hits the ground and it crunches the earth. And I hop up and spin around and start looking around. I don't see anything. I'm getting a very creeped out feeling. I'm getting very hot, very sweaty, very like hair on the stand on my back of my neck. I don't know if it was infrasound or just on high alert after that. And my buddy hops up and he starts taking off down the field. And he's like, "Do you see that coyote? It just ran between us." Like, "Oh, well, you didn't shoot at it?" "Oh, no, it was too close." And he ran out. And I'm like, "I think that was a rock, dude." And he's like, no, wasn't a rock. And he I never seen him move so fast. It was a fast walk, picked up his call, and he was up the road, headed back towards the truck. Didn't want to talk about it, was ever going on. So we're walking up the road, and every, 45 seconds, every minute or so, it sounded like something was behind us. And I could look at the guy who was with me, and he'd kind of stop and We kind of shine our flashlights down the trail. We wouldn't see anybody. I think even once we went, hello? And we didn't see anybody there, and we'd move up the trail, and we could swear because I could hear my footsteps, I could hear my buddy's footsteps, and then kind of behind us, it sounded like something trailing us, like on 2 feet. Like, hello? Now, I've been all through this area. I've hiked all through there. I've looked around. I've been down every little side trail, and I don't think there was a pot farm up there. I mean, there could have been somebody, but if it's a person, it's pretty ballsy to throw a rock at somebody with an AR-15, especially with his buddy right next to him with another rifle. I don't consider a human being, and I didn't see any signs of other humans up there. I didn't see any trash or footprints or the smell of fire. Typically, when you have transients, they tend to leave stuff all over the place. There wasn't a lot of, because we were looking at tracks on the road in because it's a dirt road, and there wasn't much there as far as tracks. You could tell when someone's been through there on a dirt bike or something. We didn't see much. But, it was definitely really freaked me out, and something kind of trailed us out. I got a really terrible feeling. It was kind of scary. It was a big mystery point. I was aware of Bigfoot by this point. I had heard of it. I was kind of into it, but at this thing I was like, oh man, something's out there, and what else throws rocks? And I was thinking it was Bigfoot, but I wasn't quite sure. And it was just kind of confusing and a little shaking up, and it was just, well, maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it was a coyote that ran next to us. I went back later and found the rock sitting there and played it back in my mind and everything else. And the guy who I went with kind of refused to talk about it. He didn't think anything was wrong. But you could tell that he wasn't letting me know everything that was going on. He was kind of shaken up about it. So that was kind of my first real encounter with something strange up there. And that leads me into the next story, because that night, sitting on the porch barbecuing, we encountered something else strange. So here's a daytime picture of the porch I was standing on for my next strange encounter. It was the same night as the rock thrown at us. It was probably an hour later. We had driven back. It was completely dark now. We had unpacked, and I think we were even barbecuing at the time and sitting on the porch, having a beer, relaxing, kind of just calming down from what happened there and kind of talking about stuff. And here's a daytime view of the porch that we were on, looking off into the distance. And it was pitch black at night, but this is a good representation. There are porch lights, and you can kind of see out there a little bit at night, depending on the moon. But there was this strange orange ball of light moving through the trees. It was going from right to left. And it's hard to tell from this photo, but there's actually a fence there, and it's about 200 yards away from the porch. Because I've lasered it before, and it's right around 200 yards, a good long way, and you could just see this steady orange light moving through the trees. Now you could see that it was behind some trees, and you could see it was in front of some trees, so it's not like it was somebody at the fence line, and it's not like something was so deep in the woods it was a washed out light. You could see this orange basketball thing just moving very, smoothly through these bushes, and it was very quiet, and you would hear something, because it's all dead leaf litter and bushes and everything else. You'd hear something crunching through there, and it was dead quiet. And I just remember turning to my buddy and looking at each other, and we're like, well, there you don't see something every day. And we're like, well, maybe it's a headlamp. And we're like, well, it would be bobbing up and down. He said, well, maybe it's a reflector or something. I'm like, yeah, but reflectors don't move. This is just calmly going from right to left off in the distance. And whatever it was, it almost seemed like kind of like it had a real yellowish tinge to it. And most headlamps these days are at least kind of white LED-ish. But it was bright. It was very bright. And you could see it kind of illuminating a little bit of the woods around it, like just this big ball of light moving through the bushes, like a light bulb just moving through the bushes on its own. And we didn't get any really closer, but it was just a strange light. The next day we went up there, and I didn't see any footprints, and you couldn't see where anything was trampled down, because it was barbed wire fence and old stuff and bushes and trees, and something you really wouldn't want to tromp through during the day, much less at night. So it was just very odd. Lots of people report these orbs. Some people report them as being intelligent, or if they follow them, it can lead them to traps or off cliffs. And other people report that coming after them are intelligently controlled. And lots of people report them around Bigfoot encounters and other strange things. So yeah, whatever it was that night, but I just remember that, being a strange night with both those things happening, and just kind of looking at my buddy going, well, that's something you don't see every day. And by that point, I hadn't even really heard of orbs. I kind of heard of Bigfoot, I thought it was interesting, maybe watched a Finding Bigfoot episode at one point or another. I think it first came out around this time. I was kind of a little bit into it, but not like now. But yeah, the whole orb of light thing was just like, dude, that is weird. What is that? And we just thought, is it the road? We couldn't hear a car coming, some kind of reflector. I don't think they have fireflies in the Sierras, but they certainly wouldn't be that bright from that far away. So it was just very odd. I know it's a whole phenomenon out there, and it's basically my orb story. One of the other stories I wanted to tell is a little bit quicker one. We set up trail cameras at the property. We set them up all around, all over the place. There's usually always one up there going at any given time, and we move them around. A couple of years back, we had three trail cameras, one at the main road coming in, one kind of between, a house and a barn, and another one kind of off to the side in the orchard. And that was always the big thing up there, not really having any cable internet or TV or any other entertainment other than the woods. It was always kind of oh, by the way, this bear picture was taken from the trail camera from the road. So anyway, that's the big thing to do up there, is check all the trail cameras. And it's pretty funny because you'll see 2 coyotes go by, then the timestamp, 20 minutes later, a couple of deer go by, and then 20 minutes later, a bobcat goes by. And then a few minutes later after that, a fox goes by, and then you'll see a skunk go by. And then 3 hours later, you'll see the reverse. You'll see the skunk go by. You'll see the coyotes go by. So there's lots of critters up there, lots of stuff going on. But one day we went up there. We checked all 3 of the cameras. You drive around in a little golf cart thing, go collect all the chips, go back, have a beer, gather around the kitchen table and wade through the thousands of pictures. Because if you know anything about trail cameras, your camera will take, especially if it's up for months at a time, 1,000 pictures, and 5 of them are, you really want to look at. So we're wading through all this stuff, and we're making sure, because one's my brother-in-law, and then one's my other brother-in-law's, and then one's mine, and we're kind of wading through the cameras. And we go out and put them back up, and this is like on a Friday, because I think we were up there for full 2 days, and then come back in on a Monday, I think. So we put them up there, and then following Monday we check, and you could see, because no one goes up there for some periods of time sometimes, and then you could see the cameras were taking all their pictures. Bird goes by, squirrel goes by, leaf moves, take pictures. And then the camera was moved like a couple feet to the left, like looking at something completely different. Like it was on the same post or tree, but someone just turned it. It was very odd. And then you check the other three cameras, and it's the same thing. Like they all got turned out of the way of the main path that they were looking. Or one, we even had like a weird picture, God, I wish I saved it, of like, it looked like, and it was mounted 6.5 feet high. Like I had to lift way over my head just to even reach it. And it's, you could see it looked like fingers or like a light tan colored like fur or feathers in the upper right hand corner, which would have to be pretty tall. Like something came up behind it and moved this camera. And I think maybe, I don't know, it was either a person or a Bigfoot or something, some force was moving these cameras around, because you could see picture looking one direction, and then all of a sudden, another picture a minute later, boom, looking off in a completely different direction. And all 3 cameras around within about an hour of each other all got moved, like something snuck up behind them and moved them just out of the way. Very odd. So that was one of those things that was very odd. And this was probably 2 or 3 years ago now on the trail cameras. So another quick little story that happened, it's actually quite ironic, is last November when we went up there, it was my buddy Brian, who you see on the right there, myself, and then Patrick, who isn't pictured in this picture. We went up there and we spent the whole day on some really far off back road looking for an abandoned mining camp, and we were filming, looking for footprints, tree knocking, doing calls, doing all your classic stupid Bigfoot stuff. And spending all day, and we're stopping, looking at things and investigating and checking at fence lines for hair and all that kind of stuff. So later on, it's pretty dark at night. You just saw a picture of the porch there, and that was where we were standing. Pat had went to bed, or I think he was inside, and Brian and I were both pretty hammered at this point. I think we're talking about politics and Trump or something like that, going on and on about this country. And completely guard down, having a beer. I think I was, smoking a cigar or something. And then all of a sudden on the porch in the middle of the night, we just hear this whack off in the distance, this really loud tree knock. And we both stopped mid-conversation and go, really? Did you just hear that? Brian's like, yeah, I heard that. And it's like, that sounded like a wood knock. He's like, yeah, I think it was. And this was like 12:30, 1 in the morning. It was really, really late at night. It was in November. The campgrounds that are nearby were kind of empty. It was super quiet, and this thing just echoed through there. And I remember we kind of wrapped up our conversation and we're like, let's go inside. So it was just kind of ironic after doing howls and wood knocks and all the big finding Bigfoot kind of stuff you see and looking for sign all day long and not getting any responses and coming up empty handed, that, you know, standing on the porch, having a beer, talking about stuff, and then all of a sudden, wham, out of the distance, you just hear this large tree knock. And yeah, so that's pretty much what it was. And then I think that same kind of scenario, but on a different trip, we were out there talking about something and we heard coyote howls, and then we heard something else that wasn't a coyote, this strange, weird, cackling howl off in the distance. And a friend of mine who was a coyote hunter was like, that's no coyote. And I'm like, what do you think it is? And he said, Bigfoot. And I'm like, up here, you never know, buddy. Okay, so the last strange thing I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, this occurred February 24th, coincidentally my birthday. It was later at night, probably 11:30 or midnight. We were playing cards, and my friend Patrick had gone out on the porch. I think he'd left something out there, or he wanted to get some fresh air. It was butt cold. It was like in the teens that night. And we're all inside and drinking, doing our thing. And he opens the door and he's like, well, what the hell is that? And I hear him and he's like, got this concerned look. And he's like, I don't know. It sounds like a giant owl out here, a huge owl. Something's hooting really, really loud. And we had porch lights on and stuff, as you can see. And I'm like, 800-pound owl. That's a classic Bigfoot thing. So I'd already taken my gun off my hip and I just didn't have a flashlight on me. All I grabbed was my phone because we was kind of like in our pajamas at that point playing cards. Completely off, you know, completely off duty, so to speak. So I grabbed my phone, hit record, ran outside, and this is what you see. Unfortunately, you don't really see much. It's just me kind of really hopped up. I did a whole separate video on this. I'll leave a link in the description where I go into a lot more detail. But basically, I ran outside, a really strange feeling, and kind of just looking around, peering around, because everything's really quiet, seeing if I hear anything, kind of just seeing what I can see, as you can see in the video. And I'm like, is there something off to the left? Because there's a whole, that side of the house is dark. And I'm just kind of looking around and I'm trying to look and listen. Then all of a sudden, this big crunch off to my right, off the right side of the porch where that redwood tree is. And you'll see me snap around here in a second. Yeah, and I'm like, crunch, and I hear me backing up. And I'm like, crap, what's out there? What's out there? What's out there? And at this point, I step back away towards the door and start shouting obscenities at my half-drunk buddies to somebody hand me a flashlight, any flashlight, I don't care, a rifle with a light on it, which I have there. And it was a good couple minutes, you know, not minutes, but it was a good few seconds before they could give me a flashlight. And the flashlight they gave me was okay, but it wasn't like, you know, the 500 lumen super bright Surefire that I had in there. So a lot of people looked at this video and said that they see eye shine, and right as I flip around and at different parts, I've watched it a number of times, and at once or twice in there, you think you just catch a real glimpse of eye shine. And what gets me is this porch is about 2.5 feet off the ground. So, and the eye shine is about eye level, maybe slightly down. So it would definitely be 6, 7, 8 feet tall, the eye shine. And you can kind of catch maybe a glimpse of it here or there. And it was very freaky because something did crunch through there. As soon as after I turned this camera off, my phone off, I ran inside, grabbed a rifle with a light on it, my 308, and then started walking down the road. And down the road, there's a barn and some trees. And I got to a certain point, I just felt this wall of fear. And I was like, don't go any farther. Don't go any farther, because you start going into around blind corners and stuff, around, you know, things where things could hide behind trees and barns and stuff like that. So I had the light on my gun and I was shining it, you know, about 75 yards down where the fence line is. And on the other side of the fence line, Brian and I, who the only one brave enough to go with me, we could see eye shine. We could see definite eye shine, and it was stereoscopic. You could see two eyes looking at us, and it was just out of reach of the light where I couldn't make anything out. And there's brush and trees and everything else down there, but you could definitely see this eye shine. And I remember seeing two eyes and then one eye and then gone, like it had turned its head and walked away. The next morning we looked in the bushes next to the tree, and you could see, like, it looks like something walking through the bushes on 2 feet. Well, if it was a person or a farmer screwing with us, good luck. It was in the teens outside or if it was legitimately Bigfoot. I think because of the way that the eye shine, you catch just a very glimpse of just a quick second off the porch was pretty high up. I think we were screwing around and blasting music and barbecuing earlier, and kind of the only thing going on probably in the whole canyon. So I think possibly a Sasquatch came in there and looked at what was going on. And maybe he had a buddy with him, another Bigfoot, and that's what the hooing was, as a signal of when Pat got up and came to the door and opened it up, he was like, hoo, 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 making a noise like, hey, quick, hide, the humans are outside. So that was kind of my interpretation of what's going on. Anyway, that was the final story I wanted to share. As more things happen, and as I think of more stories, I might do a part 2 to this somewhere down the road. Anyway, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe, and stay safe in the woods, folks.